Can you ever remember being afraid as a boy? And what was your greatest fear? And how did you deal with it? I don't ever really remember being afraid as far as fear of death kind of thing. But I remember one time, here again, it was in the evening in the summertime, and we were playing in the woods down by the Davis's house, which was back in the woods and kind of away from everybody else. And it was my sister and the Spellmans, Jackie and Jeff, and a few other of the neighbor kids, and Wayne Davis, who was an older kid, and Millie, his sister, who babysat for us sometimes. But anyway, they got the big idea somehow to tie somebody to a tree and let the bears come and eat them. Well, I didn't think it was such a great idea. And so guess who they picked? So they tied me to a tree, and I guess I didn't have to leave them do that, but I guess I didn't know any better but to let them do that. And it wasn't really tied up to the tree. It was just kind of loosely tied with a couple of belts. It was probably no big deal. But I just didn't like the idea of being fingered out. Anyway, I was tied up to this tree, and then they all walked away into the woods. And so there I was by the tree, and then I start hearing these bear sounds. Well, obviously the bear sounds are coming from the people that walked away, and I knew that, except the whole situation just wasn't real warm and fuzzy. I went from being there playing with my friends now to being fingered out and being made a jest of some sort, and I didn't know why, and it just didn't relate. It didn't sit well with me, and probably to this day, it happened at an early enough age, to this day, I'm just kind of leery of situations like that, to where when I get into a bunch of friends, I don't want to allow myself to be fingered out and made a jest of. It just didn't sit well, and maybe it was a good lesson, and maybe it was a bad lesson. It just depends how I choose to use it. But nevertheless, there was some fear there, and it's probably one of the worst times that I can remember as a kid. Another time, I was a little bit older, and in elementary school, I was afraid I was going to get my leg ripped off, really. I think I was out of school for a week, and I just got back from being sick, and so I was playing with some of my friends on the merry-go-round, and I guess they were all happy to see me. And one in particular, Henry Marting we were playing together and so forth, and I got on the merry-go-round, and I had hooked my leg in around the bar and kind of hooked my toe underneath the merry-go-round in order so I wouldn't slide off. Well, that was keeping me on, but then as I went around, he grabbed my hand and he wanted to get on too, and he wouldn't let go of my hand, and he was pulling me. Well, I was in sheer pain instantly, because actually that was like pulling my leg out of my hip socket. The leverage on my leg was extremely painful. And finally, after I was screaming and screaming, the merry-go-round stopped and he let go, and I could hardly walk. And eventually, I did put one step in front of the other and was able to get into the schoolhouse. But I gotta say, for a minute there, I thought I was going to leave my leg on the merry-go-round. Okay, recall for me 5 of the most important lessons you have learned in your life. Well, let's see, I wrote some of these down earlier. No matter what, everything changes. No matter what experience you're going through, good or bad, it's going to change. So take what good you can out of it and store it away, because eventually that will change. Always leave the other guy a way out. If you're in an argument or disagreement, always leave him a way out to save face, so you don't pin him against the wall and create an enemy forever. If you get something out, use it and put it away. I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Funny how that keeps coming up in my family, especially. If you don't lie, you never have to remember what you said. You know, that's a good thing. My dad always told me that. And for the most part, it's true, except the truth is, oftentimes, I couldn't always remember the truth. So, be that as it may, if you don't lie, you usually don't have to remember what you said. One thing that I could see as I was growing older and my parents were growing older is that I finally realized that what they were going through in their old age was new to them, just like where I was in life, be it in my 40s or 30s or in my 50s, was new to me. I mean, even though you hear people talk about it, oh geez, I'm 60, I just, don't enjoy getting older. Well, of course it's what you make it, but nevertheless, it's new to you. You've never been there before, so what you make it is new, and how you deal with it is new, and the whole experience is new to you because you've never been there before. So people, that are much older than you or us, or nursing homes, that's new to them. So oftentimes I think I have just kind of passed them off as, well, that's the way things are, but in reality, yes, that's the way things are, but realize it's a new experience for them too, and they don't much care for it either. Do unto others, that's a golden rule, and that's always a good one. God lives, there really is a God. And know where your anthills are and avoid them. That being is, that story came from a little thing I read once, where one summer day a kid found an anthill and he started smashing ants. And he wanted to destroy the anthill so he could put something in its place. But the fact is, he just could never ever get rid of the anthill. They just kept coming and coming and coming. And then one day he'd go back and there'd be more of them, and you thought he'd killed them all. The next day there'd be more, and there'd be more. So the gist of the whole story is, know where the anthills are and avoid them. So know your anthills in life, know where your shortcomings are, and avoid them. Just don't do those things that give you a problem. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't accept a challenge on the other side of the coin. But the fact is, if repeatedly you try to do something and do something and do something and it just isn't working out, maybe it's best not to try that and to go on to a different approach or try something different. Challenges are good and they build character and all that sort of thing, but in the anthill case, it may be that you just should try a different approach. Did your pastor ever visit your house for dinner, and did he have an impact on your life? Though, well, not really. When I was going to the Church of Christ, Brother Kelsey, he was a good preacher and a good man and all those things. And I learned a lot from him. I don't know any one particular thing I learned other than, an attitude, probably. But in the Methodist Church, that certainly wasn't the case as far as preacher having an impact on my life. I was too young and probably many times didn't want to be there. But I remember one time when it was my turn to take the kids to church. Barb was working, and finally went through the hassle of getting everybody ready to go to church, and we finally went to church, and there was this one preacher who was a priest, a missionary. He was a visiting missionary, and he was a younger fella, but he looked kind of different in that he looked somewhat rugged, and he had a pocked face. And he took the microphone and went down into the pews and kind of delivered a sermon from down in the pews, and he was visiting from Africa. He was regularly from, I think maybe Missouri or somewhere, but he'd been a missionary in Africa, and he just seemed so laid back and so godly and so with the word, if you will, that he didn't help but appeal, to the godly side of me anyway. And I went and spoke to him after and almost invited him to dinner, but then I guess I realized I would have had to cook something other than the usual French toast. And I don't know if, I'm sure he had probably some other engagements or something, but I found a way to back out of it. But to me, that one time in that one church with that one priest made such an impression that I almost wish I could go back and find out who he was and where he was and what he was doing today.